I married into the Lawrence family together with Bestie, and we both found out we were pregnant around the same time. I married the older brother, a rescue team captain, and she married the younger brother, an emergency doctor. Both families lived in the same neighborhood. When I was 7 months pregnant, the city was hit by a severe rainstorm. My whole body was soaked in the rain, my abdomen cramping painfully, and the water around me had turned a pale shade of red, hiding on the balcony. Trembling, I called my husband for help. After hanging up 5 times in a row, he finally answered, his voice filled with suppressed anger. "It's a rainstorm, I'm on duty. Don't you watch the news? Don't make trouble for no reason. If you have an issue, go find the person in charge of that area." Karen's legs cramped while escaping, and I still have to get her to the shelter. "Don't bother me." In despair, Marsha rescued me with an inflatable boat, watching my skirt stained with blood. She immediately called her husband for help, but he heartlessly scolded her. "Don't you know the hospital is full of injured people because of the storm today? I'm so busy I can barely keep up, and you choose now to argue with me. Karen is still waiting for me after being hurt. Just calm down by yourself." The inflatable boat had a hole in it at some point. With my weight added, the air was leaking faster and faster. Finally, Marsha stood in the water and dragged me to the hospital. I barely survived, but she lost her own child. The moment I opened my eyes, we both made up our minds to divorce. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. When the anesthesia wore off and I opened my eyes, the city's heavy rain had already stopped. My phone was washed away by the flood long ago, so I had to borrow Marsha's phone to call Kane and talk about the divorce. The call rang until it was about to hang up automatically before he finally answered. Thinking it was Marsha, his voice carried a hint of restraint and impatience. "If you need something, talk to Larry. I'm still busy." A faint, delicate cry of pain from Karen could be heard in the distance. Along with Larry's comforting words, a bitter smile escaped my lips. "Let's get a divorce. Contact me when you're done." Hearing my voice, he froze for a moment before his anger erupted. "Are you not done yet? Didn't I tell you I'm busy saving lives? Don't you know why I blocked your number? You're lying comfortably at home. Do you even know what's happening outside? I don't have time for your nonsense. Karen is just a wounded person I happened to rescue. If you insist on misunderstanding, I can't help it. Think whatever you want. I'm telling you one last time. Don't joke with me about the kids and divorce. I'm dealing with serious matters. If you call me again, I'll block Marsha's number too." Before I could say a word, he had already hung up. My arm went limp, and the phone fell onto the bedding. I never would have imagined that things would end this way with the man I had been with for 5 years. Was Karen someone he just happened to save? But her home was miles away from the area he was responsible for rescuing. He was so busy rescuing others that he completely forgot his own residential area was in a low-lying location. Was it truly forgotten, or had he never cared in the first place? He thought I could escape the disaster by hiding on the 2nd floor. When the house was flooded, there wasn't even a single phone call. I was forced onto the balcony by the heavy rain, shivering all over, my teeth chattering. My whole body was soaked in the rain, my abdomen cramping with pain. The water around me tinged a faint red. The first time I called him, the receiver gave the busy signal. The next 4 times, he hung up directly, as the rainwater gradually rose to my neck. Tears streamed down from the corners of my eyes. I held up my phone and made the last call. This time, he finally answered. I was so weak I could barely make a sound. "Honey, the house is flooded. Save me. My stomach hurts so much. I'm bleeding a lot." As I struggled to speak, the water around me turned a deeper shade of red. After a few seconds, only the howling wind could be heard on the phone. Then came Karen's sobbing. "Kane, you finally came. I thought I was going to die. Weren't you far from here? Did you come all the way to save me?" Only then did Kane remember the call was still connected. Picking up the phone, he said coldly, "All right, stop pretending. Isn't 2 floors at home enough for you to hide? I still have things to do. Don't make a scene." I'm hanging up. In the few seconds I waited for his response, the water had already risen to the corner of my mouth. Too overwhelmed to grieve, I quickly begged him not to hang up and pleaded for his help once more. The rescue boat seemed to lurch suddenly, and Karen let out a frightened cry. Kane completely lost his patience and roared angrily. "I'm on a mission in the middle of a rainstorm. Don't you watch the news? Don't stir up trouble. If you have an issue, go find the person in charge of that area." Karen's legs cramped up while escaping, and I still have to get her to the shelter. "Don't bother me." As soon as he finished speaking, a wave crashed over and splashed onto my face. Just as I completely lost the will to survive, Marsha rushed over in an inflatable boat and pulled me out of the water. Seeing the 5 rejected call records on her phone, she was furious. Grabbing the phone, she sent a voice message and cursed, "You call yourself a father? You don't even deserve to be human. Even a dog knows to save its owner. You're nothing but a beast." Divorce. We must divorce. With that, she flung the phone forcefully into the water. The inflatable raft was deflating faster and faster, and I was in so much pain my face contorted. In the end, Marsha abandoned the raft and dragged me to the hospital. But she lost her own child as well. She had the phone on speaker during the call, and she could hear Larry comforting Karen clearly. Her already pale face turned as white as paper in an instant. Her eyes, swollen and red from crying, trembled with a barely noticeable quiver of her chin. It was a long moment after the call ended before she managed to speak, forcing out the words, "There's not a single decent person in Lawrence's family." We both fell silent until her phone rang. After answering, Larry's furious voice instantly exploded. "How many times have I told you not to interfere with my brother's family matters? Can't you understand human language? Lola is your Marsha. What good could she possibly say about my brother? My brother himself is the team leader in the rescue effort. Doesn't he know how high the water level is? Could it possibly reach the second floor? Can you please stop believing everything your Marsha says? Use your own brain for once." Karen almost drowned in the flood from leg cramps. Even if she were a stranger, we couldn't just stand by and watch her die. If you're going to lose your mind and demand a divorce just because we saved someone, then I have nothing more to say. Fine, let's divorce. The baby will stay with me after it's born. I absolutely refuse to let it grow up with a mother like you who's lost her mind. Before Marsha could even say a word, she was hung up on. Just like me, we exchanged a look, both forcing a bitter smile as tears welled up in our eyes. From the incident until now, not a single word of concern. Not a syllable of care has been received, only cold, heartless blame and bitter resentment. Even if he doesn't love me, he should at least ask about the child, right? But he did nothing, just blocked my number. Even my call about the divorce was hung up. I have no doubt that if I died in the flood, my funeral would have to wait until after Karen's. At this thought, bitterness welled up in my heart. If there was no love from the start, why be together in the first place? Our Marsha, our children. And I merely pawns to stir Karen's possessiveness. No one could answer me, yet the answer has always been obvious. Leaving decisively when love is no longer felt is the last dignity of an adult. As the floodwaters gradually receded, Marsha and I squeezed onto one bed, scrolling through our phones. The screen swiped and stopped on a group photo of 3 people. It was a new post by Karen. Kane was shirtless, revealing his well-trained 8-pack abs, which looked somewhat pale from being soaked in the flood. Larry was wearing a white lab coat, a gentle smile appearing on his face. The 2 men flanking Karen on either side gave off an overwhelming sense of security. Caption: "What's it like to be rescued by the childhood crush you used to secretly admire?" She didn't say it outright, but even the punctuation radiated a flirtatious vibe. The comments section below was buzzing with excitement. "You sneaky girl, eating so well behind our backs. Which one is your secret crush? Don't pretend, it's both of them, isn't it? Where are those writers who write those stories? Pick up the pen, I want to read it today. A love between 3 people isn't too crowded, is it?" Marsha fell silent and zoomed in on the photo. Both men had empty fingers, no wedding rings. She chuckled self-deprecatingly. This job practically sets them up for opportunities. No wedding ring, and then a hero saving the beauty. I rubbed my dry eyes, took a deep breath, and turned off my phone. Don't overthink it, we've already decided to get a divorce anyway, so whatever they do has nothing to do with us. After a few more days of recovery, I gradually returned to normal activities. I tried to contact Kane using Marsha's phone, but I was already blocked by the other party. I thought about asking Larry to pass on the message, but calling him yielded the same result. It seems I was afraid that the 2 of us would disturb their trio. I had no choice but to step back and print out the divorce papers to mail to them. 5 years of feelings, and we can't even manage a dignified ending. Since they don't want to stay in touch, just sign the papers then. The day after the package was sent, Marsha received a call from the courier. After hanging up, she frowned and said irritably, "The courier said they all left the rescue point yesterday. Most people there have already scattered." I thought for a moment and took Marsha to the hospital reception desk. I dialed Kane's number using the hospital's landline. It only rang twice before he picked up immediately. "Who is this?" It was me. Hearing my voice, his initial patience vanished instantly, replaced by irritation. "I told you I'm busy, didn't I? You still sent me something. When do I have time to pick up a package? Can't you be more considerate? Wait, did you send it just to confirm where I am? Can you act normal for once? I went to save someone, not cheat on you." Before I could even speak, I was met with a barrage of scolding. He took the phone away from his ear, glanced at it, and immediately raised his voice in anger. "Why is this a hospital landline? What are you doing at Larry's workplace? You're not there to cause trouble, are you? Can you please not drag other people into our issues?" I took a deep breath and said, "You're overthinking it. I sent the divorce papers for you to sign, nothing more. The courier said you weren't at the aid station, so I called to check. After I finished speaking, he fell silent for 2 seconds before losing control emotionally. Divorce? Just because I blocked you and didn't answer your calls? I was genuinely busy with work. What's the difference between you lying at home all day, paranoid and suspicious, and being mentally ill? I told you Karen was just an injured person I happened to rescue. I didn't go into details precisely because I was afraid you'd overthink it. I've been explaining for 5 years. If there was something between us, it would have happened long ago. I just see her as a sister. Alright, stop making a fuss. Karen's house got flooded. I'm just helping her clean up and then I'll head home. Is that okay? Karen's coquettish laughter came from the other end. Lola called you. You two have such a good relationship. A girl cares about you. That's why she's concerned. No one cares about me like that. By the way, how has she been managing meals these past few days? Has it affected her normal life? Kane interrupted impatiently. Don't mention her. It's ruining the mood. Could the property management really let her starve? She's pregnant even if she doesn't eat. The baby has to. The familiar voice felt utterly alien in that moment. I covered my mouth, holding back my tears. Marcia snatched the phone and hung up abruptly. She reached out and gently patted my chest. Don't cry, it's not worth it for such a scumbag. Once we're divorced, we'll make room for them. The 3 of them could star in a film and I wouldn't even want to watch it. It's so disgusting. After returning to the hospital room, Kane took Marcia's number out of the blacklist. A message came through. Don't cause trouble at Larry's workplace. Get the hell home right now. I stared at the words on the screen, my fingers flying as I typed a reply. We're almost divorced. Where I am is none of your business. See you at the Civil Affairs Bureau in 3 days. For 3 days, Kane was completely out of touch. Not a single word of reconciliation was spoken. During that time, only Karen's social media feed kept updating. The photos showed rows of empty liquor bottles covering the table. Caption: I stand behind you in your happiness, and by your side in your sorrow. In the corner of the photo, Kane's bare shoulder is visible, marked with ambiguous red traces. I felt so disgusted it turned my stomach. Even the pain of the stitches being removed wasn't as intense. Handing the phone to Marcia, she glanced at it and curled her lip disdainfully. No wonder you didn't return to the hospital even after the rescue ended. So you were busy. The 3 of you finally seized the opportunity. She turned off the phone and started packing up with me to get ready to leave the hospital. Just as we stepped out of the ward, Kane called. Where is Lola? Why isn't she answering my calls? Is she with you? Put her on the phone. The house is such a mess and she's out there fooling around instead of cleaning up. Marcia let out a cold laugh on the spot. Fooling around? You didn't bite your tongue saying that. Before she could finish, the call was abruptly cut off. We didn't think much of it and went straight to line up for the discharge procedures. Right after finishing, as we walked to the hospital entrance to hail a taxi, we ran headlong into Kane, who was sprinting at full speed with Karen in his arms. As he passed by me, his steps suddenly halted. His voice was filled with suppressed anger. Lola, you've really let me down this time. I'll settle this with you later. Only then did I see blood gushing from Karen's palm, before I could get a closer look. He had already run into the hospital lobby. Larry, sweating profusely from anxiety, followed closely behind, pointing him toward the emergency room. Neither of them noticed our flat stomachs. Marcia's eyes blazed with anger as she snapped. He's disappointed. We're not leaving until we settle this face to face today. She rolled up her sleeves and stormed back into the hospital. Remembering we still needed them to sign the divorce papers, I followed her. But just as we reached the emergency room entrance, Larry stopped us in our tracks. The moment he saw me, his forehead veins bulged with anger. My brother was just helping Karen tidy up her house. What were you going there for? Were you trying to kill someone in broad daylight? Before, when he said you were being unreasonable, I didn't believe him. But now I see he was too lenient in his criticism, hearing that I was being framed. Marcia immediately rushed forward and slapped Larry across the face. The latter immediately raised his voice and yelled, "You hit me. Are you fucking crazy? This is my workplace." After saying that, he reached out and gave Marcia a hard shove on the chest. Marcia stumbled back a few steps and fell heavily to the ground. Only then did Larry snap back to reality, thinking of the child in Marcia's womb, his face turning deathly pale with fear. His gaze fell on her belly, and his eyes widened instantly. At that moment, the emergency room door swung open from inside, and Kane walked toward me with a grim expression. Before I could speak, he slapped the hospital bill hard across my face. The sharp edge of the paper cut through, leaving several bleeding scratches. "Didn't I tell you it was just for work? I saved so many women during the flood. Are you going to track each one down and scold them? Do you even know that trespassing is illegal? Do you realize tracking my location violates my privacy?" After speaking, Larry pointed a trembling finger at my stomach. "Bro, the baby is gone. Kane followed his hand to look at my flat abdomen and froze in place. When he realized what had happened, his eyes turned red with rage. Where is the child, Lola? What have you done? I've been busy saving lives outside, and you killed our child out of jealousy. Are you insane? Didn't I say I would come back? I was just adjusting my mood outside because I felt down. Couldn't you even wait 3 days? His voice grew louder, his emotions gradually spiraling out of control. This was the first time I had ever seen him so angry. Facing his distorted features, I suddenly let out a cold laugh. What am I doing? You should be asking yourself, what did you say when I called you on the day it happened? Have you forgotten? But I will always remember. When the floodwater rose to my chin and I was nearly suffocating, I chose to call you, my husband, for help. But you said you were busy rescuing people outside, far from home. So tell me, how did you manage to save Karen, who was only a kilometer away from our house, from such a distance? After speaking, his eyes flickered rapidly twice. When he spoke, his voice lost its confidence. I just happened to be leaving the office when I got a call from Karen, so I went to help on the way. I was in a hurry at the time, so I told you I was far away. I looked at the obvious panic on his face. The smile at the corner of my lips grew colder. Is that so? Then you don't have to rush anymore. You can go save her specifically from now on, without any more worries or lies. Now that your rescue work is done, we're done too. Let's get a divorce. Hearing the word divorce directly from my mouth this time, Kane's long-suppressed emotions completely spiraled out of control. Erupting on the spot, he roared at the top of his lungs in the hallway. Can you stop threatening divorce at the drop of a hat? Divorce isn't a game, and it's certainly not a bargaining chip for your jealous tantrums. I haven't even settled the score with you for going to Karen's house to cause trouble and hurt someone, and you still haven't given me a clear explanation about what happened to the child, yet you want to jump straight to divorce. As soon as he finished speaking, Marsha, furious, was the first to snap back. Bullshit. We've been staying at the hospital recovering after the surgery and only got discharged today. The hospital surveillance footage can prove it. As for what your mistress said, you can go verify it yourself. The neighborhood is located in the southern suburbs, and the terrain is naturally low-lying. Didn't you know that? It's been over a week since the incident. Have you been back? Have you seen the situation on the second floor? If you had taken even one look, you wouldn't be saying this. If it weren't for the inflatable boat we happened to have at home that day, not only would the child have been lost, but she would have lost her life too. May I ask what you were doing at that time? You were busy comforting your lover. After Marsha finished speaking, Kane's face visibly darkened. It was unprecedentedly grim. The expression froze on his face. It took a long moment before he managed to utter, hospitalization. Beside him, Larry's eyes widened abruptly as he finally remembered the phone call he had with Marsha. Instantly, his face turned solemn. She spoke cautiously. So the news you sent me at the time, saying she lost the child and wanted to divorce my brother, was it true? All because of the rainstorm. Only now have I realized how foolish the two men of the Lawrence family are. I was so angry I burst out laughing on the spot. Your wife's inflatable boat had a leak, and in the end, she stood in the water, dragging me to the hospital for treatment. I survived, but your child didn't make it. I let her down, but I did right by you. No woman would ever joke about her own child's life. Larry looked stunned upon hearing this. He spoke with confusion. A leak? That inflatable boat was specifically left at home by my brother for emergencies. How could it be leaking? Kane also showed suspicion in his eyes. Even now, he's still concerned about such meaningless questions. As soon as he finished speaking, the emergency room door opened from the inside. Karen walked out, holding her bandaged wrist, and seeing the tense standoff among the 4 people in front of her, a flicker of panic flashed in her eyes. She spoke awkwardly. Everyone's here. What a coincidence. The rainstorm has stopped. How about we all get together for a meal? I never expected so many things to happen during the storm. And after taking away 2 men, she framed me. Even though we were about to divorce, she still threw mud at me. And now she remains as calm as ever, as if she wasn't the one who did all those despicable things. Marsha curled her lips into a cold smile and spoke sarcastically. Wasn't that thanks to you? We came here to talk to them about the divorce. Kane finally couldn't hold back and rushed forward. Grabbing Karen's other uninjured hand, he urgently questioned. Didn't you say Lola came to your house to pick a fight? Didn't you say she was the one who caused your injury? But she's clearly been in the hospital this whole time. What's going on? And what really happened to your injury? A mocking smile appeared on Karen's face. She awkwardly began. I hadn't finished speaking at the time. And you just carried me straight to the hospital. I didn't expect you to be so worried about me, which led to this misunderstanding. I'm really sorry. At this point, she glanced at me defiantly, as if flaunting the special favor my husband shows her. Unfortunately, I no longer care. Seeing that no one paid her any attention, she spoke up again. I just said I saw someone who looked a lot like her downstairs, not that she came to my house. Larry finally showed a rare expression of disapproval. It was as if he was only now getting to know this childhood friend he had known for 20 years. My gaze fell on Karen's delicate, pale face. And I reached up to wipe away the bead of blood that had seeped from my cheek. After the miscarriage, even the pain seems to have numbed. I remember even a small wound used to hurt me for a long time. My voice showed no emotion when I spoke. Since you have something to do today, let's meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. Marcia also looked at Larry and said coldly, "You too, we're getting divorced too. I never want to see your face again, it's disgusting." With that, Marcia and I turned and left the hospital hand in hand. First, we went to the mall to buy a new phone for myself and transferred the old SIM card. Then I took a taxi and went back with Marcia to the small home we had shared before marriage. Stepping into the familiar space, I suddenly felt a sense of relief. It's a good thing we didn't sell the house when we got married, or else I wouldn't even have a place to stay now. Men really are unreliable after all. The little nest with Marcia is the eternal harbor. This house has been uninhabited for 5 years, with thick dust covering the furniture. Marcia and I didn't stop for a minute. We rolled up our sleeves and started cleaning right away, but we were too physically weak, and it took us until dusk, with intermittent breaks, to barely finish the cleaning. Marcia was so exhausted that she walked into her bedroom and collapsed onto the bed. I was about to return to my room when there was a knock at the door. As soon as I opened the door, I was met with Kane's frustrated and gloomy face. His voice was terribly hoarse, with a faint tremor in it. I had Larry take me to check the hospital surveillance and looked up the admission records. "I'm sorry." I looked at his guilt-ridden face and remembered the day Marcia rushed me to the hospital. Covered in blood, the excruciating, tearing pain felt like it was grinding my bones to dust. Blood kept gushing from between my legs, spilling messily all over the floor. At that time, the pain drove me to the brink of a mental breakdown, and all I wanted was to rush into Kane's arms. I wanted to cry and tell him how much it really hurt. I wanted to tell him how truly difficult pregnancy is. I wanted to say that I really need him, and the baby needs its father too. But now, as I look at his face, all the grievances I once held have turned into sighs. It seems there's nothing left to say. Is there something? If not, you can go. We'll handle the paperwork tomorrow. After 5 years of being together, it's come to this. Even a simple greeting between us, who were once so close, feels like a luxury. Kane's face was full of resentment, but what could he do about it? I pretended not to see. Stepping back to close the door, he suddenly braced the doorframe with one hand, caught off guard as the door clamped down on it. His composed expression instantly broke, revealing a look of suppressed pain. Why bother? Does he think this level of self-torment will win back my sympathy? In the past, maybe it would have. There was a time when even his frown would break my heart. But now, who will care about me? Thinking of my humble self in the past, I only feel ridiculous and ironic. So I stared at his face and said coldly, "Get out, and don't show up in front of me again." This was the first time I had been so cold to him. Kane was completely panicked. He spoke urgently. "I know you care about the child. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I admit it. I really didn't expect the neighborhood to be so low-lying. I went home this afternoon to check, and even the ceiling on the second floor was, believe me, if I had known the house would flood, I would have rushed home immediately to save you. I would have chosen to stay with you and the child first. You had so many chances to contact me after you were hospitalized. Why didn't you tell me?" I admit there was a bit of selfishness in my decision to save Karen. I've always seen her as a sister. If that bothers you, I can cut ties with her from now on. Okay, look, men clearly know everything. They understand it all. Those who hurt you naturally know best what you care about. They just don't change. Watching the man's humble expression for the first time, my memory was instantly pulled back 5 years. At that time, Karen was abroad, and I had just fallen head over heels in love with Kane. I didn't know he had a white moonlight in his heart. Blinded by love, I only saw perfection in the man before me. Perhaps the filter of a lover's eyes was too thick. Without fully understanding the situation, I threw myself into the grave of love without hesitation. Marcia was the same. Even our wedding had to be live-streamed for Karen, accommodating the time difference abroad. She cried so pitifully on the screen, anyone who didn't know better would have thought she was the bride. After the ceremony, the two grooms didn't even have time to thank the guests. They were busy comforting Karen backstage, telling her not to cry. At that time, Marcia and I were so immersed in the joy of marrying the ones we loved that we couldn't see any problems. Looking back now, every step of our relationship was a mistake. I took out my phone and opened the WeChat Moments post that Karen had shared. I zoomed in endlessly on that photo of them drinking, revealing Kane's clearly defined shoulder muscles as he lay drunk, flecked with ambiguous red marks. His voice was icy cold when he spoke. "Do you have anything else to explain?" There's no need. I do like children and want one of my own, but not yours. I never want to have anything to do with you for the rest of my life. During my hospital stay, I often felt relieved that the baby wasn't saved. Living in such a family is painful enough for me. I can't let my child become anyone's shadow. Or should I explain to the teacher at every parent-teacher meeting that the child's biological father is too busy helping another woman to show up? Just thinking about such a scene makes it seem ridiculous. Kane never expected me to be this heartless. His grip on the doorframe gradually loosened. His face showed a look of dejection and despair I had never seen before. The one in the photo, it was just the lighting. We didn't do anything. I was so drunk that night I could barely walk. You have to believe me. As he spoke, his eyes began to redden. I saw it and slammed the door shut with force. The loud noise from the door woke Marcia, and I quickly comforted her, saying, "It's nothing. Go back to sleep. I'm just putting a trash bag outside the door." She didn't think much of it and fell back into a deep sleep. Late at night, I opened my moments to refresh and saw that Karen had posted another update. "I hope you understand the lie I disguised, and yet I hope you don't." The photo showed a bandaged wound on her wrist. Those who didn't know might have thought it was depression that had harmed her body. A mocking smile tugged at the corner of my lips. So the two men of the Lawrence family enjoy such childish antics. Losing interest in my phone, I simply turned it off and went to sleep. The next day, Marcia and I waited at the Civil Affairs Bureau all day, but they never showed up. The phone call also went unanswered. Marcia's patience was wearing thin, her expression growing impatient. She cursed Larry a dozen times under her breath. I smiled indifferently. Forget it. Maybe he's just busy with work after returning. Anyway, we've cleared the air, and handling the formalities is just a matter of time. They won't just leave their ideal type behind and drag us along. Just as the Civil Affairs Bureau was about to close, and we were about to hail a taxi to leave, Kane's car pulled up from a distance. A smooth drift and brake brought it to a steady stop right in front of us. Both the driver's and passenger's doors opened at the same time, revealing the grim faces of the two brothers. He stopped in his tracks right in front of us. Marcia and I looked at each other in confusion. Before we could even ask a word, the two men in front of us suddenly dropped to their knees with a heavy thud. They raised their hands and began slapping their own faces with force. Marcia and I were startled, our brows tightly furrowed. I reached out to pull, but nearly got dragged to the ground by the immense force. The crisp sound rang out more than a dozen times before finally ceasing. Kane's wheat-colored skin gradually turned red and swollen. I'm not sure if it's just my imagination, but his eyes were bloodshot. He spoke weakly. I thought there were quite a few misunderstandings between us, not just our issues, but also involving Karen. I had planned to find her and ask her to help explain, but when I opened the door, I overheard her talking with her friends. That's when I realized that Larry and I were nothing but toys for her amusement. She just wanted to prove her charm by toying with us. He hesitated for 2 seconds, his face full of agony. Perhaps our ruined marriage and relationship were just trophies in her game. She blocked me when she posted that moment. Otherwise I would never have agreed to let her share something like that. I didn't mean to be late today. I just had a final talk with Karen and made it clear we won't have any contact from now on. 20 years of feelings. I never expected her to be this kind of person. If you hadn't told me yesterday, I might have remained in the dark for the rest of my life. The regret in Kane's eyes seemed genuine. His face was full of sincerity. Perhaps even at this moment, he still believed that as long as he told the truth and cut off contact with Karen, he could make up for everything. Larry, standing nearby, grew anxious when he saw we weren't responding. He quickly began to explain. That inflatable boat was also punctured because she came to our house as a guest and played with it. I heard her say to her friend with my own ears that she just casually tested how sturdy it was, never expecting it would actually come in handy one day. She said thinking of you floundering in the flood I had no idea she would do something like this. Honey, can you give me another chance? I swear I won't let any factors that harm our marriage have a chance to appear in the future. After 5 years of marriage, this was the most humbling moment for the two Lawrence brothers. Our commotion drew the attention of many passers-by, yet they turned a blind eye to the onlookers' curious gazes. A cold laugh welled up in my heart. People who can cheat really have extraordinary mental fortitude. I stared straight into Kane's eyes and said, even if the truth is as you say, and you knew nothing about it, what does it matter? You still gave her the opportunity to hurt your wife and child. You allowed her to intrude into our marriage, into our relationship. Stop making excuses for yourself. You're her accomplice. A girl living alone giving you the key to her home means she considers you family. After saying this, Kane was so anxious that he broke out in a sweat. Just as he was about to explain, I spoke first. You said she blocked you on her social media. Then you probably don't know about this post either. I took out my phone and opened the post that Karen had shared on the day the flood hit, when she was rescued. So far, The number of shares and likes has reached over 1 million. Kane leaned in to look at the screen, and his eyes instantly widened in shock. He shook his head like a rattle drum. I really don't know about this. I'll contact her right now to have it deleted. As he spoke, he took out his phone to contact Karen. He said anxiously, no wonder several people asked me to sign during the rescue, and the leader told me to be mindful of the impact. I thought, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I'll fix it right now. I pressed down on his hand that was about to dial, shaking my head indifferently. No need, don't resolve it. This time, let's just resolve us. As the words fell, his hand holding the phone dropped listlessly, hitting the side of his hip. 20 minutes later, Marsha and I each held a divorce certificate in our hands, smiling with utter contentment. This is the most relaxed day we've had in 5 years. Finally, I've shed the identity of Mrs. Jiang, just ourselves. Kane tightly clutched the divorce certificate, the document crumpling in his hand, carefully speaking. Shall I take you back? No need, if there's nothing else, we don't need to keep in touch. I smiled and said goodbye to him, then casually hailed a taxi and left with Marsha, leaving the two men standing defeated in the cold wind. That night, Kane posted his first update on social media. Refuting all the ambiguous remarks Karen had used to stir up hype, he wanted to take the opportunity to clear up all the misunderstandings. Unfortunately, the childhood sweetheart relationship had long been deeply rooted in everyone's minds. Thanks to the groundwork laid by Karen's post, Kane's previously inactive account gained hundreds of thousands of followers. The moment the dynamic was posted, it was immediately criticized by netizens and trended on social media. A loss of 1,000 for oneself, a loss of 800 for the enemy. The entire internet thought they were feuding after a failed publicity stunt. Karen didn't hold back either, posting a lengthy post just 10 minutes later. I had no idea that my childhood friend was already married. Kane, on the other hand, clarified the situation in real time. So the childhood sweethearts everyone had been shipping instantly turned into a story of a shameless lover climbing the social ladder. The beautiful image of rescue during the flood was gone. It seems that they weren't satisfied with just commenting, so the two of them started a live stream to confront each other directly. Kane's live stream was banned by the platform. It seemed like the matter would end there, but Larry registered an account and accessed information about Marsha's induced labor on the day of the flood from the hospital, posting the hospital's stamped certificate online to speak up for his ex-wife. Further sealing Karen's fate, even netizens from the same residential complex as Karen jumped on the bandwagon for clout, starting a live stream claiming to teach the other woman a lesson on everyone's behalf. Grabbing the phone and heading straight to knock on Karen's door, Karen was forced to check into a hotel overnight. During this time, Larry released the recording of Karen's conversation with her friend that day. Her emotional manipulation was exposed to the whole internet. Cementing her reputation as a heartbreaker, the situation escalated, and the impact grew increasingly severe. The platform banned both individuals together. A significant number of circulating photos and recorded live videos were taken down. Early the next morning, the news of the two members of the Lawrence family being suspended by their workplace became a trending topic. The act of speaking up for the ex-wife not only failed to gain support but also drew widespread criticism. You only come to nurse when the child is dead, you only know to dump when your mistress rides over your wife's head, and you pretend to be affectionate after the divorce. Screw you. I directly blocked all keywords related to this news out of sight, out of mind. I turned around and booked a flight abroad with Marsha to clear my head. Before leaving, Kane transferred 1 million to the bank card. I'm sorry, this is my savings from work. Consider it as compensation for you. I sent a thank you and deposited it as a fixed-term savings. No use letting it go to waste. Love yourself in the future. There will be plenty of places to spend money. As for them, let fate decide whether they live or die. Story 2. My father has a white moonlight. Every year, he would set aside time to travel the mountains and rivers with her. This went on for a full 40 years, until the day of his 65th birthday. My mom specifically asked me to invite an auntie. She picked up the microphone, stood on the stage, and congratulated them, saying, "Congratulations to this unfortunate couple who had to hide their love for 40 years. Today, they can finally tie the knot." On my father's 65th birthday, my mother specifically asked me to invite a certain aunt. She picked up the microphone, stood on the stage, and congratulated them, saying, "Congratulations to this unfortunate couple who have been hidden from the light for 40 years. Today, they can finally tie the knot." My usually gentle father turned pale upon hearing this, worriedly glancing at Maxine. As their eyes met, Maxine felt a pang of grievance. My father frowned with concern, then turned a cold gaze toward my mother. On the large screen, old photos of the two began to scroll, from when my father was 25, all the way until this past August, a full 40 years, exactly 40 sheets. My mother, with a smile on her face, as if she were the host of a wedding, spoke unhurriedly. Let's give a warm round of applause to my husband Marlon and his beloved Maxine. The audience was dead silent, with only me slowly clapping. I found out about this 3 days ago. At that time, my dad had just turned down my mom's suggestion to go traveling. While preparing for his birthday party, my mom accidentally discovered a travel photo album. Her trembling hands turned the pages one by one, her eyes welling up with bitterness and grievance. Every photo was of my father with another woman. On the back of the photos, he had written his affection for Maxine. My mother's once upright spine gradually bent, and her already aged face grew even more haggard. She stared blankly at the photo album, a bitter smile curling at the corner of her mouth. I had never seen my mother like this. Why? She looked up at me, her eyes welling with desolate tears. Why? Yes, why? She is clearly the one who is Dad's wife. She is clearly the one who accompanied Dad through the tough times. She is the one who did the laundry and cooked for Dad, and she is the one who has been taking care of Dad for over 40 years. She clearly loved Dad so much. But why had Dad never loved her that much in return? In a daze, I felt as if I had returned to that afternoon in my childhood. Mom was washing Dad's clothes at home when she suddenly fainted without any warning. I was so scared that I didn't know what to do, and I ran forward to shake her. Only then did I realize that, at some point, Mom's pants had already been stained with blood. I quickly told my father, who was about to go on a business trip, but he only took a hurried glance at Mom and finally hesitated, making an excuse. Pamela, Dad has to catch the train right away to do research out of town. Can you take Mom to the hospital by yourself first? After saying this, he left with his suitcase in tow. Not once did he look back. After Mom finished her checkup at the hospital, the doctor sighed and said, "The baby couldn't be saved. Go home and rest more. Don't overexert yourself." Half a month later, Father finally returned home. Hearing about the loss of the child, he felt somewhat distressed. "Nora, how could you be so careless? What if it's a boy?" Mother lowered her head in disappointment. Only then did he realize something and quickly tried to console her. "It's all right, I don't blame you. We'll have a son eventually. Take good care of yourself, and if there's anything you need, just tell your husband." Dad had a handsome and well-proportioned face, and when he smiled, it seemed as if there were stars in his eyes. Hearing this, Mom's mood finally improved a bit, but it wasn't until now that I realized. It turned out that Mom was so exhausted that she had a miscarriage. He was rushing to be with his beloved, Maxine. Mom thought it over all night and the next day asked me to be sure to invite Maxine over. I nodded, indifferently took away that photo album. "Mom, what are you doing?" My brother showed anger on his face, not because of my father's affair, but because he was ashamed of my mother. My mother continued, "Maxine is my husband Marlon's first love. They waited 6 long years after parting before reuniting. Marlon is quite romantic, traveling to mountains and seas with his beloved every year, jotting down their moments together on the back of photos. They journeyed from youth to old age, sharing a lifetime of love away from outsiders like me. I suppose no one could help but envy them. Of course, I am too. After all, traveling and enjoying the scenery is far happier than wasting years on 3 meals a day and household chores." Mom was clearly talking about something sad. Yet the smile on her face grew even brighter. "Enough, Nora, what exactly do you want?" Before my father could react, my younger brother slammed the table and stood up, shouting my mother's name, and yelled loudly, "Family scandals shouldn't be aired in public, don't you understand that?" My father is a well-known professor, and among the guests were many of his proud students and professional authorities. He has always cared the most about saving face. He always maintained the image of a good man in front of others, but today, with my mom causing such a scene, the persona he had painstakingly built completely shattered. It turns out the role model in their eyes was actually a scoundrel who had been cheating for 40 years. My brother clenched his fists, looking as if he was about to rush forward and hit Mom. He completely forgot that the person on stage was the mother who gave him life. I frowned impatiently. Mother glanced at him indifferently, paying no mind, and continued, "So today, I too wish to follow in the footsteps of my husband and his beloved, and dare to be happy for once. All right, Nora, after saying so much, you should have vented enough, right?" My father restrained his anger, his tone carrying a hint of helplessness and affection, as if telling the guests that Mom was just throwing a tantrum, and this was nothing but a misunderstanding, and once the misunderstanding was cleared up, they would make up as before. He is still that good man with a halo. "Marlon, let's get a divorce." My mother looked calmly at my father, her aged face bearing a pair of extremely determined eyes. My father's expression changed slightly. He probably never expected his mother to leave him with no way out. After all, in the past 40 years, as long as he was willing to speak up, his mother would always forgive his mistakes. "Stop it, Nora, let's talk about it at home." "Okay." The smile on his face was beginning to falter. My mother took out a divorce agreement and walked up to him. Sign it. My father was stunned for a moment, then turned his head away unhappily. Don't worry, I won't ask for a single penny more from you. My mother's tone was as calm as a lake, without a single ripple. We'll split the assets 50-50, and I won't pursue anything else. Hearing this, my brother immediately became agitated. Nora, all the property was earned by my father himself. What right do you have to take half of it? I sternly demanded. Mike, do you have a conscience? Don't you know who raised you? My younger brother turned and yelled at me. She just cooks and does housework. How tiring could that be? Besides, now that I'm old, I'm even more useless. How dare you have the nerve to ask for so much money? I was about to argue further, but my husband stopped me, saying coldly, your brother is right, just let it be. He is also one of my father's favorite students and has always taken pride in being my father's son-in-law. But hearing him say that, I couldn't help but feel heartbroken. Nick, do you dare say that to your mother one more time? Seeing that my husband and I were about to argue, my mother immediately intervened. All right, I can take less of the property, but you must sign this document today. Maxine flashed a barely noticeable glimmer of delight in her eyes, staring intently at my father. She was waiting for him to make his decision, so she would no longer have to live like a rat in the gutter, sneaking around all day. But my father quietly took the agreement and, without hesitation, tore it into pieces. A murky light flickered in his eyes as he rasped, Nora, Maxine is indeed a good woman, but we are merely friends. Why won't you believe me? If it still weighs on your conscience, then go ahead and scold me a few more times. Let's not get a divorce, okay? Maxine stiffened for a moment, then quickly realized what he was about to do, a smug smile spreading across her face. I couldn't help but let out a cold snort. His words were not sincere, of course. It wasn't meant for my mother to hear. Sure enough, the guests began to mediate one after another. Madam, MS. Maxine is not that kind of despicable person. There must be some misunderstanding here. That's right, Mr. Marlon's kindness toward you is something we've all seen with our own eyes. You're at such an age, what's there that can't be talked out? My younger brother chimed in impatiently. Exactly, stop making a fuss. Isn't it just a trip? We'll go with you later. How about that? Is such a small matter really worth it? Seeing the timing was about right, my father suddenly spoke up. All right, Nora, it was wrong of you to wrongly accuse Maxine for no reason earlier. Quickly apologized to her, and let's consider today's matter over. My mother glanced at him indifferently. In the past, she would have followed my father's wishes, but from today onward, that would no longer be possible. My mother shook her head firmly and said calmly, I am not wrong, and I will not apologize. Besides, I'm just over 60, and I still have decades ahead of me. Marlon, in the decades to come, I don't want to waste any more time on you. That's it then. I wish you and Maxine a truly happy and lasting marriage. After saying that, she left the banquet hall without looking back. My father's eyes filled with shock, and he stood there frozen. That evening, while I was helping my mother pack her luggage, my father came back with my younger brother. He walked into the room silently, watching my mother busily at work. After a moment, he let out a heavy sigh and softly scolded. Nora, stop fooling around. At our age, why care about such things? Are you trying to ruin my reputation in my later years? Besides, even if you don't care about me, you should at least consider Maxine's reputation, right? Seeing that my mom ignored him, my dad said angrily, don't you know in your heart whether I love you or not? I couldn't help but laugh. Isn't his love all written on the photos? My dad and Maxine were high school classmates. They were forced to go their separate ways only because they didn't get into the same university. Later, at university, he fell in love with my mom at first sight. They dated for 4 years and got married right after graduation. Back then, with the major my mother studied, she could have easily joined a large company, but my father persuaded her to stay locally, using the excuse that he wanted her by his side. My mother loved my father so much at the time that she was willing to stay, but now, she no longer loves him. So, Dad, he could no longer keep her. I've said it before, I want a divorce. Mom put down the things in her hands and reiterated, this isn't a tantrum, and it's not a joke. The younger brother jumped out again and scolded, Nora, you really don't know what's good for you. Who else can you rely on if you leave my dad? No wonder my dad likes Maxine, you're not even half as good as her. Leave quickly if you're going. But don't even think about the property anymore. Doing so will only make us all sick. I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. My brother is 6 years younger than me. When Mom gave birth to him, she truly walked through the gates of hell. On the day of delivery, the baby couldn't be born because the baby's head was too big. Mom was in so much pain that she nearly passed out. Later, the doctor suggested performing a cesarean section to deliver the baby, but Dad hesitated for a long time. He dragged it out for a full hour, and only when my mother was nearly in critical condition did he reluctantly sign the papers. It was then that I completely lost hope in him, and after my brother was born, he wasn't any easier to handle. He wouldn't sleep soundly unless someone was holding him. Mom would comfort him all night long, with hardly any time to rest. She cared for her younger brother with great attention and tenderness. Dad, however, used his busy work schedule as an excuse and simply moved to the school dormitory, but in reality, it was because he couldn't stand the noise from his brother, which disturbed his sleep. Who would have thought that as he grew up, my brother would end up siding with Dad? A trace of sorrow appeared in Mom's eyes. That piece of flesh that came from her, the child she had raised from infancy, now he was pointing at her, telling her to get out. What has she done in her life? After all, I walked over, held my mother's hand, and said softly, "Mom, I'll take you with me." Her eyes reddened, and she showed a relieved smile. "Okay." With that, Mom turned to Dad and said coldly, "Marlon, if you don't agree, we'll see each other in court." Dad, who had always been gentle, finally lost his temper, his eyes turning cold as he said angrily, "Fine, Nora, you want a divorce, is that it? Fine, I agree. But she is right. How will you survive without me? Don't you dare regret it later." After shouting, he slammed the door and left. I packed my mother's luggage and brought her to my home. Although my husband looked displeased, he didn't dare to say anything. After all, this house was earned through my own hard work. After a while, I took advantage of my daughter's long holiday and took her and my mother on a trip together. She had been confined in that small room for so long, it was time for her to go out and see the wider world. Let's go together to admire the misty rain of Jiangnan, to see the landscapes of Guilin, to tour the ancient town of Fenghuang, and to traverse the vast grasslands. It wasn't until the night of their return that Dad finally made his first call to Mom. "Did you have a good time?" I sat aside, listening to the voice on the other end of the phone. Mom said casually, "Happy. I'd be even happier if it weren't for this call of yours." Upon hearing this, my dad said with slight impatience, "Nora, that's enough. Once your flight lands tomorrow, go straight home. At your age, what are you even trying to prove? After you're back, I'll go with you to apologize to Maxine. Otherwise, won't she become a laughingstock?" Hearing the name Maxine, I nearly ground my back teeth to dust, but Mom just gave a light hum and hung up the phone without a word. The next day, as soon as we got home, we saw a figure bustling around in the kitchen. But it wasn't my dad. Under my mom's careful care, he had never once set foot in the kitchen. And this person was the complete opposite, moving swiftly and neatly, setting the dishes on the table in the blink of an eye. Who is it?" Mom frowned, tilting her head in confusion. I gave a faint smile and shook my head, pretending not to know. "Back. Perfect timing. Come and eat." Greeting us was an elderly man over 60. Though his hair was completely white, he still stood tall and straight, dignified and elegant. "Hiss, you are Leopold." Mother narrowed her eyes, looking him up and down, and hesitantly probed, "Long time no see, Nora." Leopold uncle's gaze remained fixed on Mother, and he replied with a faint smile. Mother covered her mouth in disbelief and asked, "What are you doing here?" I couldn't help but curl the corners of my mouth. Uncle Leopold called the day before yesterday. He was my mother's childhood friend and also her first love. The two of them secretly dated for a year in high school, but were eventually stopped by their parents and it ended without any resolution. Later, my mother was deceived by my father and left. Meanwhile, Uncle Leopold went abroad and never married or had children. The two lost contact for decades. Not long ago, he heard about the incident at the birthday banquet from an old acquaintance. He immediately assumed that Mom had been wronged and flew back home overnight. Later, he managed to get my phone number through someone and quickly called to ask about the situation. At first, I thought he was a scammer, until he sent me an old photo. That's a photo of him and my mom. Although the photo is black and white, without color, my mom is smiling brightly and youthfully. It's been a long time since I've seen her so happy. That's why I agreed to let Leopold uncle wait at home. I never expected that he had already prepared a large table of dishes in advance. "It's been so many years since we last met. I wanted to give you a surprise." Uncle Leopold took the backpack from my mother and replied gently. Mom came to her senses and gave me a reproachful look, but the smile on her face grew even brighter. I just shrugged and urged her to sit down for dinner. I had thought that after decades apart, they might feel a bit distant, but to my surprise, the two of them were chatting away animatedly. Uncle Leopold was witty and humorous, often making Mom burst into laughter, until my husband came home. "Mom, you all." My husband stood in the hallway, staring in astonishment at Leopold uncle, immediately sensing something was off, and questioned, "Pamela, who is this? Is there a problem with my mom's friend?" Seeing his expression, I replied unhappily. My husband silently sized up Leopold uncle, as if he understood something, and couldn't help but say sarcastically, "Mom, You and Dad haven't divorced yet. How can you bring someone home so openly? What if word gets out? My mother looked embarrassed and glanced at Leopold helplessly. I was so angry that I put down my chopsticks and was about to scold him when I saw Uncle Leopold calmly stand up and say unhurriedly, I am a lawyer entrusted by Ms. Nora to handle her divorce matters. My name is Leopold. My husband's expression stiffened, and he shot a surprised glance at my mother. Mom, are you really going to get a divorce? After the birthday banquet incident, he always thought my mom was just angry for the moment and would soon lower her head to apologize. So during this time, he had been helping my dad explain and make excuses. After I scolded him, he even called it giving my mom away to save face. What else? I glared at him impatiently, warning him not to speak recklessly again. My husband hesitated as if wanting to say something, then turned and went into the room. I apologized on his behalf to Leopold uncle, then left for the bathroom. By chance, I overheard my husband on the phone. Dad, Mom seems to have really made up her mind to get a divorce. She's even hired a lawyer. My father was silent for a moment, then said, impossible. I know her, she doesn't have that kind of backbone. My husband thought for a moment and asked, do you think Mom is just putting on a show for me, as if I wouldn't see through her little act? My father's tone was full of disdain, as if he had seen right through my mother's intentions, but he didn't know that Mom had never been so determined before. My husband paused for a moment, then flattered, Dad, you're the most clear-headed. I'll find a way to get rid of that Leopold lawyer. Leopold. Upon hearing this name, my father's voice couldn't help but rise. You said Leopold. Yeah, I noticed that lawyer is quite old, yet still has to work. After my husband finished speaking, the person on the other end remained silent for a long time. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. It's true that my father has a white moonlight, but isn't my mother someone else's white moonlight too? What goes around comes around. It's time for him to taste the bitterness of betrayal. I composed my expression and returned to the dining table. As the sky grew dark, Uncle Leopold gave me a few careful instructions before leaving. First, my mother was in high spirits, humming a tune while scrolling through her phone. Unexpectedly, my father suddenly sent her a message at that moment. That was a photo of a desert sunset and a voice message. Nora, next year let's come here to take photos together. Okay. My mother curled her lips and only replied, sign the divorce papers quickly. After the message was sent, the chat interface only repeatedly displayed, the other party is typing. Yet, no message came through for a long time. It wasn't until Mom was about to go to sleep that he finally typed, good night, sweet dreams. Over the next few days, my dad only sporadically sent my mom some scenic photos, each with the same caption, it's beautiful here, I'll bring you next time. My mom never replied once, until I saw the photos posted by Maxine on social media. It's exactly the same as the one my dad took for Mom. No wonder I haven't seen them for so many days. So they went traveling again with Maxine. I felt sick instantly. Mom's expression remained unruffled, as if the matter had nothing to do with her. It seems she has truly let it go. The next day, I took Mom and my daughter to a tea house to watch a play, but unexpectedly, we ran into Maxine. She was wearing a green cheongsam, carrying a small designer handbag. Upon seeing us, she deliberately raised her voice and waved gracefully, saying, Ms. Nora, Pamela, what a coincidence, running into you here. Coincidence, her home is dozens of kilometers away from here. She clearly came all this way to stage a chance encounter. I rolled my eyes at her and was about to leave, but when I turned my head, I saw my mother politely nodding in acknowledgement. Maxine seemed not to have expected my mother to be so composed. A flicker of disappointment passed through her narrow, phoenix-like eyes. Let's sit together. Mom didn't refuse, so I had to sit next to her with my daughter. Oh, what a coincidence. I just got back from a trip yesterday. Maxine took a sip of tea, tucking her hair behind her ear as if showing off, revealing a sapphire earring. Marlon and I just decided to travel to the border not long ago. Oh, mainly because I wanted to see the desert scenery, so he went with me. Well, you must have had a great time then. Mom looked at her calmly, as if gazing at a pitiful person. Maxine never got married, probably waiting for a chance to move up in the world, but she never expected that this wait would last 40 years. Perhaps stung by my mother's gaze, Maxine couldn't help but avert her eyes and nodded in agreement. Well, not too bad. She probably noticed the change in my dad and couldn't sit still, so she came to provoke, hoping my mom would immediately force my dad to get a divorce. But she didn't expect that my mom had long stopped caring about these things. Just as the atmosphere turned awkward, my daughter suddenly spoke up and asked, Hey, Grandma, why did my grandpa go traveling with you? Maxine, upon hearing this, she seemed to regain her composure. A faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth as she replied, Grandpa travels with whoever he likes. The daughter feigned confusion and asked, Then why aren't you my grandma yet? Does Grandpa not like you? Maxine's smile froze on her face. and she had to change the subject, saying, "Look, sweetie, these are the earrings your grandpa just bought for me. They're all right, not too expensive." As she spoke, she glanced at my mom. But my mom still showed no expression, just looked at her calmly. "Is that so? Then maybe grandpa thinks you're only worth that much." After speaking loudly, my daughter took my mother's arm and said, "Grandma, let's go home, so that others won't think we're as homeless as she is." I quickly covered my mouth, afraid I might laugh out loud. "Let's go." Maxine turned red with anger, her hand holding the teacup trembling slightly. She stared at my mother with hatred in her eyes, but for some reason, I suddenly felt sorry for her. Not only had she wasted 40 years of her life, but she didn't even know who she should truly hate. I sighed with pity and left with my mother. A month later, it was my mother's birthday. Uncle Leopold got up early and came all the way to our house to make her a bowl of longevity noodles. The noodle had to be unbroken, even I couldn't do it, yet he managed it effortlessly. Later, I found out in detail that he had actually practiced for over 20 days by watching videos, just so my mom could have this good omen. Upon seeing it, my mom was both surprised and moved. Why go to all this trouble? I'm not that precious." "Of course you are. You deserve it." Leopold uncle looked at mom with a gentle yet firm gaze. My mom froze for a moment, her eyes involuntarily reddening. It suddenly struck me that all these years, my dad had never once celebrated her birthday. He was either away on business or had completely forgotten. Only I would say to mom on time, "Happy birthday." Mom rubbed her eyes hard, pretending it was from dust, not daring to let us see her emotions. Leopold uncle naturally noticed, a trace of heartache flashing in his eyes. He pursed his lips and said softly, "I've prepared a surprise." My mother looked up curiously, watching him expectantly. Uncle Leopold smiled mysteriously and took my mother and me to the photo studio. My mother looked a bit puzzled and asked, "What are we doing here?" Uncle Leopold said, "To take your portrait." My mother widened her eyes and said shyly, "Oh dear, I'm so old now, not good looking anymore. What's the point of taking pictures?" "You're beautiful, always beautiful," Uncle Leopold said with a gentle, watery gaze. "Besides, I've already paid. If you don't take the picture, wouldn't it be a waste?" I suddenly remembered that since mom married dad, she had never taken a photo again, yet dad would accompany Maxine every year to take travel photo albums. This added another layer to my dislike for him. Seeing that mom was still hesitating, I quickly chimed in, "Yes, mom, you're only 60, which is the prime of beauty. Let's go in quickly." With that, I didn't wait for her to refuse and pushed her into the photo studio. After mom finished her makeup, my eyes lit up. It turns out the saying time does not defeat a beauty is true. Leopold uncle's choice of hanfu made mom look elegant and dignified, as if young Guifei had come to life. For a moment, I seemed to see the young girl in the photo, radiant and noble. Both Leopold uncle and I couldn't stop praising. The photographer also praised one after another. Mom covered her mouth and chuckled softly. "Oh my, it's not as exaggerated as you all say. I feel embarrassed just hearing it." As soon as the words fell, Uncle Leopold took out the hidden roses and diamond necklace, saying to mom, "Happy birthday." It was the first time mom had received a birthday gift since getting married, and she was both surprised and overwhelmed with emotion, her eyes instantly welling up with tears. The photographer couldn't help but exclaim, "Auntie, your husband is truly romantic." Mother immediately showed a girlish shyness and explained with a bit of embarrassment. After the shoot began, she was initially a bit nervous. But with our comfort and encouragement, she gradually relaxed. In the end, the shooting effect turned out surprisingly well. Because Uncle Leopold chose 3 sets of clothes in total, the photo shoot lasted the whole day. By the time we got home, it was already 8 in the evening. Just as mom was holding Leopold uncle's hand, thanking him for all the thoughtful arrangements, dad unexpectedly pushed the door open and walked out. Seeing the intimate gesture between mom and Leopold uncle, his eyes immediately turned cold. "Where have you been today?" My father's face darkened as he grabbed my mother's arm in anger. My mother was a bit surprised to see him and, instead of answering his question, asked, "What are you doing here?" My father frowned, glaring fiercely at Leopold uncle, and replied, "It's your birthday today. I cooked for you." With that, he took mom by the hand and led her into the room. I couldn't help but be shocked, since they got married. My dad had never once cooked a meal. "Why are you suddenly willing to cook for my mom today?" Leopold didn't plan to come in at first, but seeing my dad's attitude, he followed in with some concern. My dad shot him an annoyed glance and then picked up a hairy crab for my mom. "Nora, I worked all day to make this for you. Try it." He forced a faint smile and said to my mom. My mom frowned, staring intently at the large crab without picking up her chopsticks. My dad asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Then Leopold uncle pushed the bowl aside and said seriously, "Nora is allergic to seafood and can't eat crab either." My father froze in place. After more than 40 years of marriage, He didn't even know my mother was allergic to seafood. My mother smiled mockingly and turned to Leopold uncle, saying, "It's okay. You go back first, I'll handle it." Uncle Leopold hesitated and glanced at my dad, then finally nodded. "All right, I trust you. Call me if anything comes up." Watching their interaction, my dad felt something stuck in his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. Leopold after uncle left, my mother quietly put the seafood feast my father had prepared into the refrigerator. Then, with a cold expression, she cooked 2 bowls of wontons. My father watched my mother eating silently in front of him, gritted his teeth, and spoke up. "Nora, stop making a scene. Come home with me." My mother shook her head in refusal. "If you have any further opinions about the divorce agreement, you can bring them up, and we can discuss them again." "Do you really have to do this?" my father said angrily. "I've already swallowed my pride to come find you. What more do you want?" My mother smiled impatiently. "Haven't I said it already? I want a divorce." My father clenched his fists in anger and turned his head away. My mother wasn't in a hurry either, just waiting for him to speak. After a long while, he couldn't help but ask, "Nora, do you want to leave me to be with Leopold?" My mother didn't deny it, only asked in return, "Didn't you also want to be with Maxine? Now I'm just making it happen for you, aren't I?" My father's facial muscles trembled uncontrollably, and he could no longer speak. He just glared angrily at my mother, then swept the bowls off the table and stormed out in a rage. The next day, my father signed the agreement and went with my mother to finalize the divorce. As soon as the two stepped out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, they saw Maxine walking up with a smile and, right in front of my mom, linking arms with my dad. My dad didn't refuse. He even glanced at my mom with a hint of pride, but my mom simply said calmly, "Congratulations. May you two live happily ever after." My dad's face instantly fell when he saw her reaction. He angrily shook off Maxine's hand and strode toward the car. Maxine looked somewhat embarrassed and jogged to catch up with my dad. I quickly called out, "Dad, walk slower. Be careful not to strain your back, Ms. Maxine." Not long after, my dad sent my mom a photo of a marriage certificate. It was his and Maxine's. He even deliberately invited her, saying, "Nora, welcome to my and Maxine's wedding." At the same time, Maxine also posted pictures on her social media with the caption, "After all the twists and turns, it's still you." The comments section was filled with blessings. Even my brother affectionately said, "Ms. Maxine, from now on you're my real mom." My mom calmly opened my dad's message and replied, "Congratulations, when is the wedding, and where will it be held?" But the whole day passed without a reply from my dad. When my mom tried to message him again, she found that she had been blocked. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Still, she didn't waste much time. She tied it up briefly and headed out to the appointment. I asked, "Is it with Uncle Leopold?" My mom nodded sheepishly. I smiled faintly and said, "Go ahead, Mom, I'll always support you." I can see that Leopold uncle really loves Mom. Mom seems happier than ever when she's with him. Watching Mom walk away, I couldn't help but feel my eyes welling up. She has worked hard for over 40 years. She certainly deserves this happiness. Leopold after Uncle Leopold took my mom out for a candlelit dinner. The two of them strolled around the mall. Soon, Mom's gaze was drawn to a large screen displaying pictures of kittens. She had always wanted a kitten of her own, but due to her busy schedule, she didn't have the extra time to care for a pet, so she had to give up the idea. Now seeing the picture on the screen, Mom's desire to keep a cat is stirring again. Pointing at the screen, she turned to Leopold and said, "It's so adorable. Let's go to the pet store together later and take a look." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned her head to look back, but the photo on the big screen suddenly changed to a picture of her and Leopold from their younger years. Mother's heart trembled, and she looked at the screen in astonishment. Leopold knelt on one knee, took out a ring, and proposed, saying, "Nora, over 40 years ago, I once missed my chance with you. Hopefully now, you can give me a chance to make up for my mistake. For the decades to come, are you still willing to let me stay by your side?" Mother covered her mouth, tears falling like broken strings of pearls. Back when she first got together with Dad, she had longed for a proposal scene, but at that time, Dad hadn't prepared anything at all. He simply asked a brief question, and the two of them ended up getting their marriage certificate in a daze. Little did she expect that at the age of 63, this scene would actually come to pass as promised, even if it was 40 years late, even if the one proposing wasn't Dad. But so what? The happiness that belongs to Mom has finally arrived. Passers-by took out their phones to take pictures, exclaiming, "Wow, at such an old age, they're still so romantic. How enviable. This is what you call growing old together. So blissful." My mother took a long moment to calm herself, then nodded vigorously. "Yes, I do. But just as she was about to slip on that ring, a figure suddenly darted out from the crowd. "Mom, what are you doing?" My brother pushed through the crowd, pointing at Mom in shock and asking, How could you do this to Dad? You're this old and still doing such things, isn't it disgusting? How will my father ever be able to hold his head up again? Seeing the visitor's hostility, Leopold uncle immediately shielded my mother behind him. My mother looked coldly at my brother and said, Mike, your father and I are already divorced, and didn't you tell me to get lost too? Now I'm gone, you can go find your Maxine to be your mom, if there's nothing else. Please don't disturb me again, I don't want either of you anymore. After saying this, she pushed her brother aside and left the mall, pulling Leopold uncle along with her. My brother was so furious that he told our dad about it that very night. At first, Dad refused to believe it, but after seeing the video online, he angrily called my mom several times to confront her, but my mom decisively blocked him. Yet he showed up at our doorstep again. That day when I came back from the company, I saw a figure standing under the streetlight from afar. The figure looked familiar, and upon closer look, I realized it was my dad. He was smoking one cigarette after another, hesitating whether to knock on the door, but then he timidly retreated back to where he was. I couldn't help but ask, Dad, what are you doing here? Didn't the doctor tell you to quit smoking a long time ago? Why are you smoking again? Hearing my voice, my dad instinctively tried to hide, but in the end, he rubbed his hair and pretended to be calm, saying, Oh, I came to see my granddaughter. I chuckled to myself, choosing to see through it without saying a word. He glanced guiltily toward the second floor of the villa and stammered, Well, your mom and Leopold, they've decided to get married. Before he could finish his question, I cut in with my answer. My father paused, his eyes reddening, and asked unwillingly, Is that so? Are you really decided? I smiled faintly and said, Dad, just focus on taking care of yourself and Maxine. Don't worry about mom's affairs. My dad awkwardly raised his head, blinking his eyes, trying to hold back his tears. I know. Well, I'll go now. He rubbed his nose, took one last look at the window on the second floor, then turned and walked dejectedly into the night. I looked up in the direction of his gaze and realized it was actually my mother's room, but the curtains were tightly drawn, making it impossible to see what the person inside was doing. My father probably finally realized, this time, he had completely lost my mother. On the day my dad and Maxine were supposed to have their wedding, the guests waited for a long time, but he never showed up. My brother was so anxious that he kept calling me, Pamela, where did you trick Dad into going? Why hasn't he come to the wedding yet? I yelled angrily, You're such a grown-up. Yet you can't even keep an eye on an old man, and you have the nerve to come to me to demand an explanation. Unexpectedly, as soon as I hung up the phone, I turned around and saw my father squatting at the entrance of the residential area, holding a cage. He was wearing an old suit, seemingly the same one he wore when he married my mother, only now he looked nothing like the spirited man he once was. Instead, he appeared unusually dejected. I never expected him to come here to wait for Mom. In 40 years, he finally chose Mom for once. But it was all too late. I was about to call him when I saw my mom and Leopold uncle coming back holding a little white cat. My father, upon seeing this, flusteredly smoothed his hair a few times and, holding the cage, hurried forward. Nora, he called out anxiously, You've always said you wanted to keep a pet. Look. This is a little golden retriever I carefully picked out for you. Do you like it or not? My dad handed the cage to my mom, smiling somewhat ingratiatingly. He looked at my mom expectantly, hoping to get some response from her expression, but my mom only glanced awkwardly at Leopold uncle, then refused. Marlon, I prefer cats. The light in my father's eyes instantly dimmed. He was silent for a moment, then pleaded in a disheartened voice, Nora, I miss your wontons. Could you make them for me one more time? Leopold uncle watched him coldly and said without mercy, Mr. Marlon, you and Nora are already divorced. If you continue to harass us, I will take you to court. Upon hearing this, my father was filled with rage. He pushed the cage aside and made a move to hit Leopold, showing none of his former gentleness. The little golden retriever, thrown to the ground, was terrified and whimpered loudly. My mom and Leopold uncle both rushed to check on the golden retriever, not even bothering to spare a glance at my dad. After the two of them carried the golden retriever away, my dad finally couldn't hold on any longer, clutching his chest and collapsing to the ground. After calling an ambulance for him, I sent messages to my brother and Maxine, asking them to come take care of my dad. A week later, my brother suddenly came crying and begged my mom, Mom, go check on Dad. He's not doing well. Your dad's current wife is Maxine. Why should I go see him? At the mention of that name, my brother grew furious. Don't even mention that woman. She's a fraud. She took all the family's money and ran off abroad to live it up. Mom, I'm begging you. Both Dad and I know we were wrong. Please, go see him. He really can't live without you. My husband wanted to speak too, but I glared him into silence. He used to think that once a woman gets married and has children, she's tied down for life. But clearly, that wasn't the case, with my mom setting the example. He no longer dared to entertain his initial thoughts. In the end, he could only force an awkward smile and sit back down on the sofa. My brother knelt on the floor, begging my mother for a long time, but she still didn't agree. In the end, they could only leave in despair. A few days later, my mother and Leopold uncle happily obtained their marriage certificate, officially becoming husband and wife. Meanwhile, my father lay in bed, suffering from illness. In the end, he passed away with regrets. I heard that even on his deathbed, he was still murmuring my mother's name. Sadly, he would never get her response again. A month later, news of my brother being imprisoned for killing Maxine spread throughout the circle. Those who once supported them turned against them one after another, condemning them as deserving of their fate, and my mother just sighed and didn't pay any more attention. She and Leopold chose a villa and settled in this city. 3 months later, the two held a lavish wedding, fulfilling my mother's youthful dream. The video was posted online and instantly caused a huge uproar. Blessings poured in the comments. My mom also completely started a new life, spending the rest of her life hand in hand with Leopold uncle.